Thanksgiving is broken. Yes, you heard that correctly. Thanksgiving is broken. We have set aside a day on our calendar to reflect on the past year and think about how grateful and thankful we are for the people in our lives, for the things that we have. But the day completely fails to do its job. But don't worry, I believe that the Bible provides us with the insight we need to save Thanksgiving. Now, don't get me wrong. I love Thanksgiving. Growing up, it was my favorite day of the year. Thanksgiving meant playing football with your friends, being surrounded by your whole family, and eating delicious foods until you pass out. I have so many great memories of Thanksgiving, but that doesn't change the fact that Thanksgiving is broken. Is Thanksgiving fun? Sure. Is it a wonderful time with your family? Of course. Does Thanksgiving do its job? Absolutely not. But what is the job of Thanksgiving? Thanksgiving is supposed to be a day that we've set aside to look back over the year that was and remember all the blessings that we've received, to be grateful for our loved ones, for our jobs, for our possessions, for the foods that we eat, and for all the things that we have that we just don't deserve. I think that people realize it's important to hit pause sometimes and to look back and really appreciate all the things that we have. And yet somehow, the day after Thanksgiving, the day after we have all reflected and thought about how grateful and thankful we are for all the stuff we've got, is the largest shopping day of the year. The day after Thanksgiving is the day we decide we need a whole bunch of new stuff, that the stuff we've got isn't quite good enough. While I'm very grateful for my TV, I would be even more grateful if it was bigger. Somehow, looking back and reflecting on the stuff that we have makes us want new stuff. It's almost like we're not actually thankful for what we have. Sure, we might say that we're thankful for it, but if you look at how we act, I'm going to say that we're not actually thankful. And Black Friday is the proof of that. I believe that people realize this is a problem. A number of years ago, I felt like Black Friday really peaked with all the doorbuster deals and people waiting in line all night long and leaving Thanksgiving dinner early just to go stand in line at Best Buy or Walmart and then trampling over each other when the doors opened. I think that after a few years of that, people actually started reflecting and realizing, wait a minute, this kind of defeats the purpose of Thanksgiving. So we've adjusted slightly, and now you have pre-Black Friday sales or Black Friday sales that run all weekend long, or my personal favorite, Cyber Monday. For those of us that want to be grateful all weekend before realizing we need a bunch of new stuff. Now, believe me when I say, I'm not opposed to a good deal, but that doesn't change the fact that Thanksgiving is broken. Now, there are families out there that are trying to combat the ineffectiveness of Thanksgiving. People have realized that you can't just expect people to be thankful. You have to actually be intentional about reflecting and being grateful for what you have. So, in order to instill this in children, a lot of families, well-meaning families, will go around the table at Thanksgiving dinner and have everyone say what they're thankful for. This is a wonderful tradition, and it's a way that people are, again, trying to be intentional about being thankful. So they go around the table and little Billy will say, I'm thankful for my family, or I'm thankful for my dog, or I'm thankful for my house, or for my friends, or for my school, or my country, or my whatever. These all sound like great things to be thankful for. But within Billy's response, I believe that we can see the root of why Thanksgiving is broken. You see, all of his responses are, I am thankful for my whatever. They're all about him. In his gratitude, the only person he is thinking about is himself. And it turns out that's not gratitude. That's being glad you have stuff. You see, being thankful or being grateful requires you to understand the one who has provided for you. Otherwise, all you're doing is saying that you're glad you have things. There's a big difference between saying, I'm thankful I have a house, and I'm thankful for my parents who work hard so that I can have a house. You see, our thankfulness and our gratitude should not be directed at the objects that we have or even the people that we have around us, but at the ones who have provided the objects or the people. In order to truly be thankful, we have to acknowledge the ones who have provided for us. As a child, this is likely your parents, but what about us adults? I'm the one who pays for this roof over my head, and I'm the one who bought all this food. Should I be thankful to myself? Well, I'm pretty sure that's called pride and that's not gratitude. And this is something that the Bible directly cautions us about. All of us, no matter how old we are, have to acknowledge that all we have was provided to us by God. This is the key to fixing Thanksgiving. We have to redirect what we are thankful for. Sure, we can be glad that we have stuff, but we need to be thankful for the one who is providing it. Looking to the Lord and saying, I am thankful that God has provided me with a family that loves me. I'm thankful that God has provided me with a roof over my head. I'm thankful that God has provided us with a table full of delicious foods. This takes the emphasis off of ourselves and puts us into a position to actually be thankful. Strangely enough, the Bible tells us to do this very thing. In Deuteronomy chapter 8, Moses is talking to the Israelites about going into the promised land and reminding them who had provided for them for the past 40 years. In verse 2, we read, remember that these 40 years, the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness. God provided the manna to eat so that you would understand that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. Their clothes didn't wear out, their feet didn't swell. God provided all of their needs. And you've got to remember, this is at the end of the 40 years in the wilderness. This is the second generation since coming out of Egypt. Everyone who was 20 years old and older had passed away in the wilderness. So this is a generation of people who really only ever knew the wilderness experience. They only ever knew eating manna from heaven and drinking water from a rock and being covered by a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. But this wasn't going to be the case forever. God is about to bring them into a good land, a land of brooks and fountains and springs, a land of wheat and barley and fig trees and pomegranates and olive oil and honey, a land where they're going to eat without scarcity and where they're going to lack for nothing. These are all good things, but the Israelites will still need to remember who is providing those things, which is why in Deuteronomy 8:10 we read, when you eat and are satisfied, you are to bless the Lord your God for the good land he has given you. This is known as grace after meals. When we all think of saying grace, we generally think of praying before you eat, which is a good practice. We see Jesus doing that. It's a good practice. But were you aware that God commanded us to pray after we eat? Praying before you eat is actually kind of easy in comparison because you need something. And as people, we're generally pretty good at going to God when we need something. When I'm hungry or when I'm hurting, I'm pretty good at asking for what I need. But what about when I don't have any needs? What about when all my needs are met? Then what happens? Do I still go to God or do I forget him? It's at that moment where I have to actually stop and remember the one who had provided for me. And this is Deuteronomy 8:10. When you eat and are satisfied, you are to bless the Lord your God for the good land he has given you. God knows that when the Israelites go into the promised land, they're going to have all of their needs met and sustained by the land itself and their own hard work. They're no longer going to be eating manna from heaven or drinking water from a rock. So they need to mature and understand that God is still their provider, which is why the chapter goes on and we read, be careful not to forget the Lord your God. Otherwise, when you eat and are satisfied, when you build houses in which to dwell, and when you have herds and flocks and grow large, and your silver and gold increases, then your hearts will become proud, and you will forget the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. God knows that when we stop acknowledging the one who is providing for us, our hearts will become proud, and we will forget the Lord our God. You might say in your heart, the power and strength of my hands has made this wealth for me. But remember that it is the Lord your God who gives you the power to gain wealth in order to confirm his covenants that he swore to your fathers, even to this day. So you see, my friends, in my opinion, this is why Thanksgiving is broken. We have failed to understand Deuteronomy 8. We have failed to acknowledge that God is ultimately our provider, which requires us to be thankful to him. This isn't just a fun play on words or an issue of semantics. This is an issue of our heart. What do we actually value and what do we actually care about? And who are we actually thankful to? Are we willing to acknowledge that God is the one who has provided our needs and who has given us the power to gain wealth? Or do we think the power and strength of our own hands is who made this wealth for us? So this Thanksgiving, I want to challenge you to do two things. First, let's change up the language when we say what we're thankful for. Instead of being thankful to objects and possessions and things, let's be thankful to the one who has provided us with those things. As parents and adults, let's model that behavior for young people so they can grow up understanding that ultimately, God is the provider for all of us. And my second challenge is to actually do what Deuteronomy 8:10 says. It says, when you eat and are satisfied, you shall bless the Lord your God for the good land he has given you. So I want to challenge you, after dinner this Thanksgiving, to pray. Sure, you can still say grace before you eat, but try to remember to say it when you're done eating too. It won't be easy, but nothing that truly changes us ever is. And thanks for joining us today here at Bible Class. Happy Thanksgiving.